Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Inside Lowell Daily Pulse, the Thursday, May 29th edition of the Daily Pulse. I'm your host, Teddy Panos, coming to you from the WellPoint Studios here in downtown Lowell. And if you've been watching the Daily Pulse since we launched back in January, you know that this is the show where we keep our finger on the pulse of everything happening in Lowell and in the world around it, no matter how far that world may stretch. And that's certainly the case today, because we're stretching all the way from Lowell to Washington, D.C. And who better to do that with than with our good friend from the Lowell Sun, the Lowell beat reporter, and a million other beats to boot that she's got. But Melanie Gilbert is back for another round of battle.
In the lion's den.
You are. I told you before we hit record that I pride myself on my Trigger 'em Tuesdays show. However, you may be better at triggering me on Sunday morning.
I know. I got to tell you, Teddy, when I was coming in here and you kind of gave me a heads up on the show today, and I thought, should I bring my lawyer? I don't know. Should I?
No lawyers needed. You're two people going back and forth, exchanging ideas. And ultimately, as people always tell me, oh my God, Melanie is so different on your podcast than the way I read her. And I always tell people that's why never.
Oh, that's interesting.
If you can avoid responding via email and make a phone call, especially in a controversial or heated thing, do it via face-to-face is best, but a phone call better than an email, because the written word is, it
can be through a different lens.
Right.
That's interesting.
I interpret it the way I read it, not necessarily the way you wrote it. Whereas when we kind of chat.
We text a lot, too. I text a lot with other people, and it's kind of nice to bounce off. I was just texting last night with Kim Scott, and it's just good to sort of have, and sometimes we butt heads on issues, but it's good to just sort of have an open dialogue.
Oh, she went 2 years without talking to me when she was on the school committee. Are you kidding? I have a long history of pissing people off. You're a rookie.
I got a long time to earn my stripes.
Well, we got a lot of stuff to talk about. Big breaking news yesterday in Lowell regarding the DeMoulas family. Looks like a feud part 2, only with new combatants. We'll talk about that. Your Sunday column item on the ice activity in Lowell. And we have a major update on that from this morning. And then I want to do a little book review, because you actually did the work. I've only watched Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson on podcasts and their media appearances. You actually read the book. So we want to talk about original sin.
Reluctantly, because I felt like he should have reported that. And so I will not really... I didn't buy the other books, like Maggie, what's her name? Haberman?
Maggie Haberman.
I didn't buy her book, no, because I was offended. But this was too juicy, so I had to dive in.
All right. Well, that's so more so than the details in the book, and I do want to talk about them and kind of get your thoughts on it. But I'm curious about the media's responsibility over the last 4 years, and quite frankly, I'll say it since 2015, since he who shall be unnamed for now came down that escalator in Trump Tower. So we got a lot of stuff to talk about with Melanie, and who knows where else our conversations will take us.
All right, let's do it.
We're going to get right to it right after I thank my Daily Pulse sponsors. Of course, we start with Ray Booten. You probably have already memorized. If you watch the Daily Pulse, you know what I'm going to say. If you're new to the Daily Pulse because of Melanie, then you know that Ray Booten is a licensed realtor in Massachusetts and New Hampshire. He is a certified appraiser in both states as well. So if you're looking to buy or sell a home, a business, or a commercial property, the one call you should make is to Ray Booten. RealestateRayBooten.com is his web address. Let's thank as well our friends at WellPoint. You notice we're coming to you from the WellPoint Studios. WellPoint, the only health plan offering healthcare benefits exclusively to Massachusetts GIC members at WellPoint. Your whole health is their whole point. Thank you to Ray. Thank you to WellPoint. Some other sponsors that we're going to thank as well. Let me turn off my computer audio here. But we kick off our conversation with Melanie Gilbert. Story, of course, on InsideLowell.com. Your colleague Peter Courier had a lot more details than most early on. I caught wind of what was happening with the DeMoulas family and Market Basket through Boston TV. Peter published a story shortly thereafter that had a statement from a DeMoulas spokesperson and gave a little more depth.
I think the Arthur DeMoulas.
That's right. Because
they got out in front of it.
So for those who are missing, RDT is out in terms of the day-to-day operations of the company for now, placed on paid administrative leave.
Right.
That's a big salary, I'm going to guess, to pay for somebody who's not working.
Yeah, that's a good question.
But as I first learned by reading Peter, it appears that there's some kind of a family squabble yet again, only this time it's not RDT with his cousin RDS, who was bought out the last time this went public in 2014. But now, according to RDT DeMoulas, they're the three sisters who helped him buy out his three sisters.
Yeah, not RDS, right.
Who helped him buy out RDS back in the day, now used their board representatives to temporarily,
I believe they're children.
Those their kids?
I thought it was.
Oh, okay.
Maybe not.
Even more
I'll walk it back just in case.
You know, it makes sense. I mean, their names wouldn't be DeMoulas if
because his daughter is
right.
on the board, and she was kicked off too.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So the way I'm reading it, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I assume you've spoken with Peter.
I read his story.
You only read his story,
Yeah.
but it looks like there's some kind of battle over the succession plan and how to run the day-to-day operations of the business. And it appears that, RDT would like to keep it as is, pass it off to his children, just like his father passed it off to him and his grandfather passed it off to his father. There appears to be some kind of dispute about the succession plan, which seems kind of weird to me. Like, why would they be against passing it down and keeping it in the family, unless, as somebody who, works there but isn't higher up in management, told me that maybe they want to go sell it, or maybe they want to go public.
Well, the strength of Market Basket is its family-run model.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing like it. You can do Stop and Shop, which in the Midwest is Kroger. You know, you have all those, like those chains, or Giant in Washington, D.C., but they're all anonymous, places.
Corporate entities. And you don't know. You don't walk in and see the owner, RDT DeMoulas, stocking a shelf or checking the shelf.
I shop at Market Basket in Burlington. I drive all the way out there to go get my groceries there because I just love the vibe. It's just the people wear those smots, and they're all over the place. Like, there's a ton of people. Yep. So it's kind of interesting. On our Facebook page for the Sun, people were saying, and I don't know what their sourcing is on this, but it's kind of an interesting wrinkle. Of course, the press release is going to say he's blocking the succession, but the underneath issue may be that they either want to be bought out and monetize, or they want to do cuts and monetize. Like, so who knows? Sort of pillow or fluff up their bottom line. So it'll be interesting to see when he actually comes out with a statement. I don't know if he has a non-disclosure agreement with his own company. I can't imagine.
So the talk is, are we going to have the same situation we had in 2014? Some of the employees will walk out. The truckers will refuse to ship product.
I see a poll on your site, Hetty.
But I've also, some people have questioned me, well, I don't think it's going to work this time. Why would I'm of the mind that it's going to work, but I'm curious. You shook your head. You don't think it'll work. Why don't you think it works this time?
I think it's a different environment. What was the last one? It was 2014,
yes,
right?
August of 2014.
So that was almost 6 years after the 2008 meltdown. Yeah. So I think people were feeling pretty solid at that. I just don't see it happening now. But I don't know. The workplace seems very fluid right now.
Yeah, so one of the things I'm hearing is they've kept a lot of the staff, where last time they cleared, not besides clearing out RDT, they cleared out some of his top people.
Right.
This time they cleared out some people, but it was, as you said, his son, his daughter, and some other loyalists that, they're alleging that what he was doing to justify the administrative leave was he was trying to organize activities again that would hurt the company. My hunch is he knew the battle was coming and was starting to get the wheels in motion for what happened in 2014, and they're trying to get ahead of it.
Right. Well, I will condition that it's not going to happen on if it comes out that he was trying to prevent a sell, the company selling. I think they will walk out. Absolutely. Because everybody knows that when you sell, there are cuts.
Correct.
And nobody wants to lose their job, and they can come together over that issue. But if it's just a succession issue, I don't see that happening. So I think the coming days will determine the story, is how it's spun.
Right. We haven't learned the full story yet. And
No.
we may never know the full story. I'm still convinced we don't know the full story of 2014 and even before then. But here's why I think it works.
Oh, you think they're going to walk out?
I think there will be some level of a walkout. I also think there'll be some level of a boycott. And ultimately, if you read the memo from the board, they're trying to stop the boycott and the walkout. They're telling people, it's important to keep your jobs. The people rely on us, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Grocery supermarket margins are so tiny.
Right.
So tiny that even if, let's say the customer boycott is 10% as effective as it was last time, can that corporation afford a 10%
well, it would make them,
in their business?
It would make them more attractive to venture capitalists.
Maybe.
So who knows?
So you're thinking maybe it's counterproductive.
Maybe.
I got it. Okay.
Well, I always attribute all sorts of machinations to people, like apparently people do with my writing, but maybe not. Maybe it's just they're playing it as it lays. There's just family friction that's spilled out into the public. He wants his kids to take over. His sisters want their kids to take over, or maybe it's a buyout. And maybe this is a way to lower the asking price.
So my hunch is it will end the same way the first one did, again, with a walkout, protest, something or another, and then a very hefty buyout. There was an interesting tidbit in one of the stories that he just finished off paying the $1.6 billion loan.
Right, which is amazing in 10 years,
right?
Or 12 years, or 11.
So maybe he buys them out? Is that what this is about? But why?
Oh, so he drives down the price and he buys out his own company?
Why not ask for a buyout? Why go through this?
I don't know.
It's interesting.
I think what might rile up the troops is like with the whole enterprise stuff with Rockland Bank. I mean, everybody said they're going to be layoffs. I mean, you don't want to say it. You don't want to sound like you're being negative Nancy. You're raining on people's parade. It's supposed to be a good thing, right? When a bigger bank comes in and expands your access and your reach. But then we find out, well, actually, there are going to be 125 people laid off. And there might be more because their filing is higher. It's like 67. I haven't found those positions yet. So what's going on with that? And so I think everybody knows that when they're buyouts, if they're going down that route, it's not going to bode well for the workforce.
All right. So I got a number of phone calls yesterday. I was at my son's baseball practice. We shifted over to basketball practice when I became aware of this, trying to work on getting something out, fun. Life has to stop for a major story. But
your kid had to walk home?
My phone, I stayed there. I was able to get a hotspot off my phone in the daily school gym, and we were good. But my phone started going off the hook, and I started to hear from some of the voices who went public in support of RDT in 2014.
Oh, interesting. Who are still there?
Who are still, the political voices.
Oh, gotcha.
And this is where are the politicians going to be this time? This is a different battle, but a lot of politicians were out there at Stadium Plaza, standing out there and showing their support. I remember, then state rep, now city manager Tom Golden being one of them. Many others were out there as well, publicly voicing their support for RDT in the battle with RDS. I think that happens again. I don't see how it doesn't, because if you remember back in 2016, at one point, Hillary Clinton brought up the DeMoulas case.
Oh, that's right.
As a presidential election issue, like this is what we want in America, against corporate greed and venture capitalism. And look at this beautiful success story in our business schools. I remember interviewing UMass Lowell business professors who said we were teaching this. Other colleges and universities across the country were teaching this. So I feel like everybody kind of knows the story, and I'm not sure why the players would switch sides or choose to sit it out unless something comes out. I think the board's going to have to come out with something showing some type of financial malfeasance or some kind of plot to, harm the company. Otherwise, my take, that's why I think they're going to fail, because I don't think they're going to be able to show that. If they could, they might have hinted at it yesterday. But
it's the opening salvo. Is that what you're saying?
When you fire a shot, you better fire. You need a little shock and awe.
Right.
When you take a shot at the king, it better be a death shot, or else you're in trouble.
I think if there's a underneath thing to sell out, that I think you'd see all that. I think you'd see the political class come out, because we can't take any more layoffs. That would be very difficult for Lowell.
That was a recurring theme I heard yesterday from some. I'll keep them anonymous for now.
So if I were Arthur T, I'd be putting out that line.
Lowell cannot take a hit from losing him, and a lot of the behind the scenes support he does. And I'm sure if it's selling out to a corporate entity, be it a Stop and Shop or a Hannaford's or whoever, they'll do their best. But let's be honest, it's not going to be the level of community commitment that the DeMoulas family has displayed.
And I'd be interested, now that we're talking, I'd be interested to see where all these other players live. You know, like, I don't know where Artie lives, but, you know, he does seem to have a Lowell persona or a Lowell presence.
Right behind Stadium Plaza.
Oh, he does?
I believe it's Lowell, but it may be Tewksbury.
Okay, but he's in the spitting distance.
He's right there. Oh, yeah.
He's not phoning it in.
No, he's not. There's a reason why headquarters is in Tewksbury at Stadium Plaza.
Right, okay.
So, you know, I think he's got his finger on the pulse. I'm curious how many politicians might have seen this coming ahead of time as well. None have said so to me, but clearly he did. If they're saying he took actions, then clearly he knew
and was in
something
cahoots
was
with
coming,
other employees, yeah.
So, you know.
So I want to know who the mole is that ratted out the boss. That's what I want to know. Like, how
apparently
that come
the sisters.
Yeah.
I see, you know, that's why I never trusted my sister. You know, once she moved to Andover, I knew she lost her Lowell roots. took on a different name, left Lowell.
Well, I have to look that up. You know, some of those board members are, you know, phoning in from Vail or, you know, Aspen or Salt Lake City.
The French Riviera.
Exactly.
Right?
Like, oh, these are the people, you know, they're representing the people. He does have that person or that reputation of being a hometown guy.
People person. Hey, look, he's still the only supermarket that I'm aware of where you've got bag boys.
Yes, yeah.
Bag boys or girls.
Yeah.
And there is no self-checkout lane at any of the market.
You don't have to because they go so fast.
I mean, haven't been to any, to all of the stores, especially the newer ones, but the ones I go to, I cannot self-check my 6 items or less. You got to go. He's keeping jobs, and that's why I think you'll ultimately see the politicians, whether they want to get involved or not, they're going to have to take that stand.
These are really good questions. Yeah, I'll have to find out how many people they employ in Lowell. And then look into that board and find out what the scoop is.
I'm willing to guess, at least in the greater Lowell area, he's probably one of the largest private employers, right?
Yeah.
Because you figure, like, even like the store closest to me is technically in Chelmsford, on Chelmsford Street, but you can spit and hit the Lowell line.
Oh, right.
3 overpass. You know, so same thing with, you know, Stadium Plaza and that store and whatnot. So it will be a fascinating.
Huge properties. What's the one up by Ferry Road? Is it called the Ferry Road store?
The Pawtucketville store is how we normally refer to it, but that's the newest one.
Okay,
in this area anyway.
And then the one that's right across the street from the Hannafords, is that Bridge Street? I can't. No, I might. That's out in that might be Chelmsford too, but it's also in the Lowell Highlands area, or no? No. No.
I got the wrong place.
I think it's off of the connector, off of, you know. I went up there to take pictures with the egg story, but I was so struck. But there was a Hannaford just down the road, right across the street. So I took pictures of them too.
Look, wherever you see a McDonald's, you were going to see a Burger King or a Wendy's.
Yeah, so maybe I should call Hannaford's and find out what they know.
I remember their poor employees back then just looking like battered and beaten, looking like the Iraqi soldiers.
Yeah.
In 1991, they were just beaten. But you know.
Well, that store, interestingly enough, not to, you know, rain on Hannaford, but the Market Basket, I went shopping. I only went in there to take pictures and talk. They don't talk to the press. You have to call corporate.
Of course.
But then while I was there, I got some food, you know, because it's off the hook. The bakery, the deli. Oh, my gosh. So, and that's what I was saying. I had like 3 things, a soda and a muffin and a sandwich. And I thought, oh, for God's sake. But then they cranked. I was in and out. Yeah. And then I went down the road a little bit across the street to Hannaford. And it was a beautiful store, absolutely beautiful, but not, I mean, it's like a small town in Market Basket. Those aisles are packed.
Oh, that Pawtucketville store, the little coffee shop. You can go and meet with.
Yeah.
You can go meet the Greek Senate, as I call them.
Yeah.
Senator Panagiotakis has meetings out there all the time.
We'll have to do a show out there, Ted.
Yeah, we'll do it. Let's do a live show. Let's go in support of in support of.
Oh, that's a good
RET.
idea. There you go.
I like it.
Be kicked out.
Probably kick me out. Yeah, I kicked my ass out of there anyway. But I have a hunch this will play out over the next week to. I think the last one was a 6-week saga before.
Right, it was a while.
Everything was settled, but let's see how it plays out. We'll be reading the Lowell Sun for more reporting.
Watching Inside Lowell.
And naturally on Inside Lowell as well. All right. We got a lot more to talk about with Melanie Gilbert from the Lowell Sun. Let's quickly thank our Daily Pulse sponsors. Ray Booten, licensed realtor, Mass and New Hampshire. Find him online, realestaterayBooten.com. Thank you as well to our friends at WellPoint. At WellPoint, your whole health is their whole point. Washington Savings Bank, banking that feels like home. Make the switch now to Washington Savings Bank. TMI Properties, quality and value at every price point. Find your perfect space with TMI. Mahoney Oil, providing warmth and protection to Greater Lowell and Southern New Hampshire since 1925. The Greater Lowell Community Foundation, improving the quality of life in our communities through strategic, impactful philanthropy. Francis E. Preventure Insurance, the agency we've counted on to protect our most valued assets since 1982. And by the Massachusetts Pirates, they're bringing all the hard-hitting action and excitement of arena football to the Mill City tonight. Pirates, rare Thursday night game against the Jacksonville Sharks. It's Heroes Night. It's honoring our heroes out there in our communities. Chance to get some great football action. Hope to see you out there. We return to our discussion with Melanie Gilbert. All right. It was a double-barrel triggering of me on Sunday.
Oh, no, what happened, Teddy?
You and your column item with apparently a community leader who wanted to stay anonymous.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Right.
While calling for other people to publicly go out and do what they want them to do. And then to boot the DeCal Substack.
Just to bump in real quick. Yeah, they're not off the record. They're not on the record. They're anonymous, but they're actually giving me something. I can't get that. You know, I'll take anything, and
correct.
I can't even get that. So I get your point, though, but I'm not even pulling down anything from other leadership.
The point from this community leader and from 𝐷𝐿 Jr. was Lowell's politicians have been too silent on the ICE actions in the city of Lowell, quick update, by the way, this morning, Lowell Centerville neighborhood, Coburn Street. ICE activity. Looks like they have a car pulled over there, somebody in cuffs. We don't know the details. It certainly looks like it's the type of federal actions we've seen over the last several weeks here in the city, but that was this morning. And then one more in the
So these are two separate
Centerville neighborhood.
They're two different teams, is what the people are alleging.
So this is the school, behind the school on West 6th Street.
What's the timestamp
Earlier,
on both of those? Are they started in the...
I don't want to call it down. The first one was 7 a.m.
Okay.
So I'm going to assume probably in the same ballpark, but it looks a lot like last week's raid at the
with the vans
on Bridge Street. That one says it's clearly a roofing van, if you know what all those ladders are, but it says roofing in the back of it, although it doesn't give the name of a company that I can see when I blew up the photo. But ICE is back in the city again this morning, Centerville neighborhood, and it looks like apprehending workers. Your anonymous community leader wants the city of Lowell's electeds to speak up. And in opposition to this, I'm not sure he or she wants them to speak up in support of them, but wants them to speak in opposition of them,
the
as does
they
𝐷𝐿.
wanted to address it. I don't think there was a slant either way. It was just acknowledge it was the closing quote.
Acknowledge it, but to speak out in support of our immigrant population was kind of how I read it.
Right, in general, because I think the quote was that we're an immigrant city. So to speak out, and I think, yes, you can freight that either way. But I liked it because I felt like it was very, who can be against that? Just
who can be against an immigrant population?
In support or acknowledgement of our immigrant roots and to protect our space.
Nobody can be against an immigrant population.
We don't have anything on the city website, and that's what I put in the column. You go to Cambridge, you go to Boston, you go to Arlington, my hometown. The chief of police has put out a statement on the homepage with links, which links to their immigration policy, links to the ICE detainer website, which I'm writing.
Does Arlington have a big illegal immigrant population?
I don't think so.
So it's easy to be brave when the fire's not coming towards you.
There's no question, but they did do that in response to community or what do you call it, input.
So you personally believe, though, if I'm reading it correctly, that Lowell's politicians should take a public stand?
Well, I think you should just put information out where people can find it.
What kind of information?
Like the LPD's statement on immigration, which would they pass that in 2014?
Yeah, it was a long time ago. Boy, we're going back to 2014 a lot.
Yes,
right,
I know.
Between DeMoulas, the original sanctuary city discussion.
Yeah, right. Well, there you go. That's
and
when
let's
it all
not forget
started.
all of Joe Biden's pardons that go back to 2014, which we'll get.
It all started there.
All right. So can I ask the question? Why are we trying to encourage people to speak up in opposition of a law enforcement action?
Well, I think there are concerns. Some of the things that I put in there, if you want to bust illegal immigrants, bring it. But if you're busting based on targeting, or you're busting without proper identification, some of those pictures that I've seen, and I've been trying to catch up with these raids. I'm always an hour late, or I saw a van pass me, a SWAT-like vehicle. I thought it was NEMLEC. So, then they go past me because they're booking and it says DHS. I thought, I should follow them. Maybe they're on their way to a raid. The Lowell exit was already to my right. So they were going toward Burlington, but they were going so fast I had to break off the chase. So, I'm trying to be there when this kind of stuff goes down so I can see it with my own eyes. Do they have a lanyard that says DHS? Anybody can buy a jacket that says, you can go into a cop shop. Used to be, when I worked for Customs, you had to show ID to go into a cop shop. I don't know what it's like now. The regular public couldn't just walk in there and buy a Customs jacket or a, gear that said police. But now I think it's pretty available.
So let me ask this, because I've seen that a lot. I've also seen some factually incorrect stuff being put out there.
Wait, you've seen what a lot?
I've seen a lot of they don't display badges. They
I don't
do
see
this
it on their hip or on their...
Do we know if they have to? Do we know if federal officers acting sometimes in an undercover capacity?
Well, I don't know. That's a good question.
Lowell has undercover cops who don't identify themselves. They don't have to wear a badge. That's part of police work and has been forever. If this is standard practice for ICE, DEA, and whoever,
I think my point...
Why are we telling people you should go out and resist this on a false premise? Because there is another false premise that's been put out there. They can't arrest you without a warrant.
Not in public. I mean,
they can't come into your house or private property.
Right.
But the general public, we saw in Worcester, the public start to storm an ICE operation that took place on a public street.
No, I understand.
And Worcester police had to get called in. So now you're pitting your police department against your residents. Right. So first of all, one of my beefs is before we inform people of their rights, how about we inform them of the proper rights? ICE doesn't need a warrant to arrest you on the street. No law enforcement. If you stab me on the street, which I'm sure you may want to do at some point, Lowell police can come and arrest you, and they don't need a warrant. They can probably come in here and arrest you.
I don't know. Well, walk it back. I don't know why it would be an issue to wear ID. And I'm pretty sure that even the gang police have to, display their identification at some point in that process. If they have to say, I'm a LPD officer.
When you're involved in an action where if you telegraph yourself, some judge is going to escort somebody out of a courtroom, or some resident's going to hide somebody, or so on and so forth, that's a legitimate law enforcement tactic. I would venture to get.
Yeah.
I haven't. You know what? I should bring Chief Hughes on in here.
You should.
For
really good.
For more,
but my problem is that they're starting to mirror the Charlottesville people. They're starting to mirror the J6 people. I don't think that's a good look.
Which Charlottesville people?
The
Antifa ones?
Yeah.
The Proud Boys.
Were they Proud? I don't know what they were. They were a loose coalition at that time. But, they're starting to look like, I don't think they were wearing face coverings at that point. But, the Proud Boys who march around Boston or some of these other towns and they get out of the U-Haul.
Or the feds who dress like Proud Boys and march around.
Right. Well, exactly.
To make it look like Proud Boys.
Either way, if you're not identifiable, I think that's a public trust or a public right. I think it's a public law enforcement issue. I had heard, and I can't confirm it, that somebody had called to say there's a kidnapping taking place, which just kind of cracked me up.
Yeah,
and I thought, oh my gosh, I would never even think of it.
Well, if you frame it as a kidnapping, it creates even more alarm. But, that's my thing. This is all about creating alarm. Now we can get into you're arresting workers, which I'd prefer they get criminals. We don't know if these workers also have criminal records. If they're going to arrest workers, then they need to go to the general managers and CEOs and presidents of these
that's
companies.
like what they do in the drug trade.
And get them as well, because you're clearly hiring labor that you shouldn't be hiring. You're also breaking the law. And I did write, following the Bridge Street raid, I wrote to the ICE office, and when the phone doesn't ring, I know it's them. But I asked, I'm like, hey, are there any charges that these people are facing besides entering the country illegally? And you know me, I'm not one that's gonna dump on them for arresting people who are illegally, but I understand it. They've broken the law. You can battle it out. But it makes it more legit to me if they have criminal records, but also they need to start going after the people who are, teach these corporations a lesson. Perhaps it won't be as attractive to come into the country illegally and try to find work undercutting American workers if nobody will hire you to do so, because they're now facing jail time, hefty fines, and the loss of their business.
Well, I also think that, some of these people are legally here, and they have asylum pending, and they're still being scooped up. So, this process is flawed on a lot of levels. And I don't know if they're tail wagging the dog, or it is a dog story, because information is really hard to come by. And we've started saying in our reporting, and the Herald as well, alleged illegal immigrants, because it's so hard. We can't just parrot their line, oh, they're gang members. We used to say arrested. What do we know? It's based on your presentation of that. We can't get the documents. So now we started, both the Herald and the Sun are saying alleged. But I had the same conversation with Aaron Curtis, because the Treasury Department is it Scott Bissett? He's been issuing notices from the Treasury Department that they're going to crack down on the cartel money that comes into the United States. I thought, oh yeah, that's a great one. And I said to Aaron, it's so easy to go after. We run all those stories where they bust the low end dealers. But where are the stories where they're busting the people up the chain? There's the money that is allowing these low-end dealers to circulate in our community. And I totally agree with you on that. These people aren't here without upper-level support enabling the actions.
I'd like to see some of that. I want to talk about the politics of this, though.
Okay.
So
that's why I'm here, Teddy.
You believe that the city / its politicians should speak up. 𝐃𝐚𝐢𝐥𝐲 Jr.
You don't have to bang the drum and say ICE sucks. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying you should acknowledge what's going on in the community and make resources available, even if they're paper tigers. But I think it's a show of solidarity in the community that you lead.
All right, so you're a little more temperate in what actions you want to see them take. Others are calling for them. Somebody needs to speak up, and I fully expect now that the budget situation seems to be in the rearview mirror, maybe. Once it is, though, I fully expect a counselor to make a motion asking the city of Lowell to take a more public stand. I understand counselors are already starting to get emails and notes.
Oh, are they?
Regarding this. So why should Lowell's leaders speak up?
Well, I can tell you, I've been speaking to community leaders who serve this community, whether it's a food pantry or housing supports or whatever, homeless, whatever, and also businesses. These businesses are they won't go on the record because nobody wants to say my business is dying on the vine. But these businesses are being hammered, not specifically because their workforce, but because their customer base isn't coming in. When you have these I'm pointing at your screen where the pictures were popping up for the viewer. When you have these kind of images when you have these kind of images in the community, I think it does send, it's an overused term, but a chilling, what is that? A chilling message or whatever, is that you're not safe to go down to, let's say, Centerville, to the bodegas or whatever they have down there, because who knows, you might be targeted. It looks like they've got a truck there and a car. I mean, I do feel some of this is Fourth Amendment. I put that in the column. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm dying. Where is the Fourth Amendment concerns or the due process? And that seems to be a vacuum. So when you have this heavy law enforcement that looks sort of, sketchy in our small, tight-knit community. We're a big city, but we're a tight-knit community. It sends a wrong message, and I think we're going to start to see those metrics possibly, with our summer events.
All right. I'm gonna disagree with you on the politics of it.
Okay.
The assumption is that
easy, Teddy.
the assumption is that Lowell and Massachusetts as a whole will support the governor and the stance she's taking, and some of the other politicians who've come out and spoken in opposition. I'm not so sure. Donald Trump and his thoughts on immigration haven't been a secret for a decade.
Right.
He came down an escalator in June of 2015, almost 10 years ago to today. Today's May 29th, 2025. Right. And right off the bat, he went after illegal immigration as an issue. Again,
he's pretty much going off after
a lot of things, but
immigration. But back then it was
immigration
illegal.
Versus illegal is a different animal. And I think not enough people give the public credit for being smart enough. Donald Trump has been elected twice. If you listen to him, he's been elected 3 times, but the results were called into question on one of them. But he's not making a secret. It's not like he's saying, I love illegal immigrants and I'm going to grant them all amnesty. And then when he gets elected, he's changing and getting to these Gestapo brown shirt tactics.
Yeah,
he's telling you what it is. And he's gotten elected. And in fact, even here in Massachusetts, in deep blue Massachusetts, Donald Trump saw his highest increase in vote percentage. Didn't come close to winning it.
We talked about that.
But from 2020 to 2024, the largest vote share increase for Donald Trump in any one state was the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So we take you to last night. Boston, pretty woke city, right? Michelle Wu is their mayor. And Joshua Kraft thought
to be... What do you mean by woke?
she's
a humanist?
The most non-woke thing she did was putting ashes on her head on Ash Wednesday when she testified in front of Congress.
Is she Catholic?
By the way, I didn't know, but she put ashes on her head on Ash Wednesday when she testified in front of Congress.
We don't do that. It's interesting.
Yeah. Did she go to, do we know which church she went to on Easter Sunday?
The Church of City Hall. I don't know.
I'm a cynic, but Joshua Kraft, thought to be her most serious contender, the son of Robert Kraft, owner of the New England Patriots. He tried to outwoke her in a debate last night. And the headline from the Boston Herald, sister paper of the Sun, right, reads, "Emotions over Boston's illegal immigration protections boil over at mayoral debate." And I saw the headline in my inbox this morning. I'm like, oh, the wokesters went. Somebody, Josh Kraft said something, and the wokesters were all over him. And it appears that Josh Kraft may have tried to go farther left than Michelle Wu on immigration. Let's see. A couple of the no-name challengers, somebody named DeRosa, said, there's a lot we can do to support our immigration community, but we also have to remember Bostonians. We have to remember the Bostonians who are looking for those same rights, to make sure we protect folks who live here who are looking for the same services. One of my debates, there's only so many services to go around. You start pulling them away from other communities to provide the immigrant population, illegal migrant, however you want to term them, you're going to see some pushback, a la the Roxbury Community Center. Anyway, DeRosa and this other fellow, Miller, I forget what, I can't find his name in the story, kind of said the same thing. Josh Kraft went full Michelle Wu and then some. Quote, "I think it's absolutely abhorrent that federal agents could walk into your place of work, your house of worship, or your children's schools and remove you, even if you have zero connection to violent crime." Now, first of all, Mr. Kraft, do we have evidence that they're walking into houses of worship and arresting people?
Well, they just arrested a 17-year-old high schooler. So I think there's...
In school?
The fact that, you know what, I saw the headline, Teddy. Okay. But the fact that we're having these conversations shows how poor the messaging with ICE is that there's no clarity on what the hell is going on here. And there's a lot of room to poke at them.
I'll argue that
I think it's deliberate.
I'll argue the messaging is clear. Tom Homan has been very clear. I just think people don't like the messaging, which, by the way, fair enough.
The messaging is fear and watch your back, whether you're legal or illegal or, you're targeting. They're not picking up white people, honestly.
If you're here illegally.
And that's not woke. That's just... Do we know we have a lot of... I know there was a time where there were a lot of illegal Greek immigrants who I knew, and I cheered when Russians, a couple of them get deported. I was perfectly okay with that. I'm completely against President Trump's mass deportation plan, and I will stand with our immigrant community wholeheartedly, no matter who is in the White House, Joshua Kraft said. Wow.
Ooh, that's Michelle Wu. So why should I replace Michelle? She said the same thing. Why would I vote for Josh Kraft over Michelle Wu?
That's his challenge.
If you're going to say the same thing.
Yeah.
But
well, he says it better, Teddy.
Here's where here's the plot twist that I didn't see coming in Boston at a Boston mayoral debate. Kraft's remarks drew such a harsh reaction from part of the crowd, with onlookers standing up, jeering, and shouting in his direction, that an event organizer had to go on stage to settle things down and warn against future interruptions.
Or I don't get it.
No, people who didn't like what Josh Kraft had to say.
Woke people who didn't, I don't get it.
No. Well, it appears that a lot of the minority community in there, the African-American community,
didn't like him speaking to them?
Is ticked off and saying, hey, what the Mr. DeRosa guy said, hey, we've got Bostonians here who rely on these services, and every time you import people and give them money that you maybe shouldn't be giving them according to federal law, you're taking it out of the hands of people who have already been here and who need it, which is an argument that's being used. And it's coming from the minority community. I'm looking at 2024's election results and Donald Trump's share of the black vote compared to what it was. His share of the Hispanic vote, winning Miami-Dade County. And I'm thinking to myself, the people aren't as stupid as some of the folks think that they are. They know this is the pie. We're all fighting for that last piece.
Well, it's kind of like the homeless issue in Lowell. Why are we feeding Tewksbury's or Drakett's or Haverhill's or Boston's homeless when we have our homegrown homeless right here? I mean, it's the same argument in a different political sphere. But, this kind of segues into our other conversation about Original Sin, the book about Joe Biden's alleged dementia.
Yes.
Is that I never understood that. And I get that Maura Healey's taking a lot of heat. In fact, from who's that guy, Devins? Who's running? Who might run against her?
Oh, God.
He worked for Charlie Baker. I can't remember his name.
That's not 𝐃𝐚𝐢𝐥𝐲.
Yeah, thank you.
But there's another guy who was part of the.
There is, yeah. And he just said, that shame on her for letting all these people. I don't think she really had a choice. I mean, what was she going to do? I mean, everybody was taking. There were people coming to New York, and they were going to Houston, and they were going to Miami, who bust them up here.
There were governors who were. The guy down in Florida was shipping them out. He famously shipped a bunch to Martha's Vineyard, where they welcomed them with open arms and meals.
And now they've been arrested. And
of course, they gave them their hats and their coats. They got them out of there within 2 days from Martha's Vineyard, if you notice.
But the whole thing never made sense to me. The TPS, sort of the blanket. I didn't understand all that. I understand the process.
When you have a poverty problem, a homeless problem, and an affordable housing problem, why would you import millions of people?
It seemed
intentionally, not just crossing the border. You'd put them on planes.
No, they were
and flew them into
They were here
airport.
legally. They were at the invitation of a lot of those people under the temporary protected status from Haiti, from Venezuela. What was the other country?
Nicaragua. There's a ton of them. El
right?
Salvador,
the biggest ones, though, lately. And so I was always kind of thinking, why are we doing this? I mean, I get that the TPS is designed for conflict areas where you're not safe or you need to request asylum, but it just seemed like a deluge. And there wasn't talk about messaging. There was bad communication. Well, now you read this book and it looks like maybe Joe Biden wasn't really in charge of these decisions, and that maybe the people around him were driving that train, which is
that's a nice segue. But whether the illegal immigration thing and the ICE actions is a politically
I don't know why they have to be like that
situation or not, we'll find out. I don't think it's as much of a winning situation as the folks who are calling on Lowell's politicians to speak out think it is. But I could be wrong. Well, remember, in a place where a lot of people jumped through hoops and did the right thing to get here legally, which is most Lowellians, they may resent the folks who cut the line, because if they're at all like me, I've seen my mother's family members get rejected repeatedly. My brother-in-law's parents, we literally had to go get senatorial help to get them here for his wedding to my sister. And his sister was not allowed to get in. Right. So whether the Biden administration wanted to call TPS legal or not, it is jumping the line. And I believe that there would be some pushback to it. And Josh Kraft, we're starting to see it. So
we'll see how that goes. There are a lot of moving parts here.
Yes,
I think if you want to be a respected federal agent, you should show your colors. That's it. I don't know why it's such a big deal. I mean, there's like 10 agents for every person they're arresting. I don't, and they come fully loaded. They have cartridges, they have tear gas, they have, they've got guns on their legs, on their hips.
When you get Congress people body slamming you're
Yeah.
you have to defend yourself.
Yeah, I think there's a different messaging going on here than legality. I think it's a fear factor, and I think they're doing that very effectively. And I think that's an issue that you can speak to. I think you can say, hey, when you come into my house, mi casa, no pun intended, mi casa, su casa,
Not so much.
dial it down, because I really am the boss of this city, and you should talk. Let's just sort of work out some.
But if you're not cooperating, how am I going to come in?
We're not.
Tom Homan has said you're not. Tom Homan has said Boston's not cooperating.
Well, Boston.
And Michelle Wu has made it a point.
Yeah.
Governor Healy has made it a point. The Attorney General Andrea Campbell have made it a point. We're not going to help you. There are judges sneaking them out the back door. One's about to go on trial.
They can still wear their insignia. Some of those guys I saw. And this is secondhand reporting thanks to our citizen reporters, because I'm still.
Don't fat shame me, Melanie.
They're not in shape, Teddy. I worked with these guys. They were tight, and these guys. It makes me. Our joke was always that Customs was in shape, Border Patrol were a bunch of slobs, and that anybody could be a Border Patrol agent. So maybe they're bringing up people from the border to be ICE agents. That would make sense, but otherwise, I just don't see why you wouldn't want to reassure the American people or the people in whose town you're rampaging, that we're the real deal. Why not? That's it. That's my. I feel like that's not just a constitutional issue. I think whether the town supports you, your sanctuary city, or not, just fly your colors.
But if people are being encouraged to interfere with law enforcement operations.
I haven't seen that in Lowell, obviously, but when you get on ICE's, are you following ICE on Facebook?
I saw some cards put out there.
Cards.
Back at the beginning, after Trump's inauguration, they were putting cards out there. They were all over the stores. Know your rights card. You have one. And one of those was they need to show a warrant. And they don't.
Well, that's incomplete. That's incomplete information.
So now you're deceiving people into taking an action that may get them arrested.
Teddy,
that's where I have my problem. You're going to force a Lowell police officer to arrest somebody who thinks that they have a right to interfere with an action based on the premise that the ICE agent didn't show a warrant?
Back it up. Back when ICE first came to the city and they went to the wrong Market Street address, they were going to buildings. So now I think when those cards came out, and I'm spitballing here, but that's a good line of inquiry. When those cards came out, the assumption, and assumptions always screw things up, the assumption was they were going to come knocking. So the know your rights makes sense. Now they're not even bothering knocking. They're targeting vans with ladders on them and, asking for ID. So I think that's all very sketchy. I don't think it's going to bode well for the economic climate in Lowell. This is nationwide and international news. My fear is with and I know they don't keep metrics on this, but, travel between Canada, which is only 3 hours from here, 4 hours maybe, Montreal's 4 hours and 4.5 hours. We can't have this sort of.
I'll be able to spread my blanket out a little farther at Algonquin without the Canadian tourists in their Speedos.
Right. Yeah, right. I just think I don't think it would hurt to take the side of the city and say, guys, come on. That's not cool. We don't need that.
All right. We'll watch this unfold. Like I said, I'm pretty sure a counselor will make this motion, and I'm pretty sure the parade of speakers will get up to the city council, and I'm sure the councilors on an election year are going to have to take a difficult
We're going to have
vote.
hard metrics in terms of business sales tax and revenues, whether, it's going to be hard to tease out, but there have been a lot of layoffs, so that's going to be one factor. But if people aren't coming to Lowell because, there's constant drumbeat about raids taking place on city streets, I don't know. Or you think you might be pulled over incidentally, even if you're let go?
Will it affect the folk festival?
I worry, and I'm a big fan of the folk festival. I love the folk festival. I love writing stories about it.
I got to tell you, I'm not sure that the folk festival crowd is the same as the migrant crowd, but, we'll find out. It remains to be seen. But the other thing, Melanie read a book, so I didn't have to.
There you go.
I did the Cliff Notes
Do
version
the hard work
TV.
all the time, Teddy.
Melanie did the hard work. Let me take this little graphic off the screen and let's put the book on there. The book cover is Original Sin. President Biden's Decline, its cover-up, the word that should be underlined, and his disastrous choice to run again by Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson, Alex Thompson from, was it Axios or Politico or one of those?
I think it was
sites?
Axios, yeah.
Well-respected journalist.
They do their diligence.
By me originally. Yeah. Jake Tapper.
Is he still on CNN?
He is. He's still.
Yeah.
He's got a Sunday morning show, and he appears, I think, at some point in the afternoons. He's a big part of their election night coverage.
Right.
So.
Yeah, he did the debate.
So let me just kind of give me your thoughts on the book report. Is it worth reading?
It's a quick read, and it's alarming.
It's a quick read. Okay,
it's really quick. I mean, I think it's maybe 250 pages, but he's a good writer. You know, he keeps it moving. Yeah, they both are.
Okay.
I think I bought it reluctantly. But
Why reluctantly?
Because I think that's your job, is to report that news. And he tries to make a defense. They both do that. They wrote like 3 articles, and that constitutes the depth of their reporting. But I think they were holding out. Like Maggie Haberman.
Yep.
When she came out with her book, I didn't buy it, although I wanted to. But I was offended because I felt like, why am I going to give you $14.99 on a Kindle when I could have had it in the paper through my subscription? Like, it just felt skeezy.
Well, it's they're showing, everything that they covered up for 4 years in order to make a buck.
Well, exactly. And that's their job. If you're an insider with the administration, you wait until you leave, I get it.
Right.
That's okay. But you're a news person. That's your job.
Supposed news person.
When you're getting that information in real time, and when you read this book, and that's basically why I bought this book, because I kind of felt like I saw it in real time. We've all had members of the family that, they walk stiffly, or they move, or they're 1,000-yard stare, and but they're not president of the United States. And it was clear in the reporting, which is why I read the book, that they saw it way back when.
Of course they did. And
yet the book didn't come out, in 2016 or 2018 or 2020. They like to pitch it, well, it came out after the debate. After the debate, the die was cast. Then, the scales fell from their eyes and it was obvious. Well, that's what we call a conflict point.
Yeah, the debate, aka the organized coup on June 27th, where Joe wouldn't step aside, so they set him up to fail. Do you remember in your lifetime any presidential debates in June? Always after Labor Day. Nobody pays attention to after Labor Day. Didn't we grow up being taught that?
Well, I didn't think he should debate. I mean, personally, I thought that was an accident waiting to happen. In real time, I was surprised.
Which is why the Democratic Party did not allow RFK Jr. to have a legitimate campaign and hold a debate against President Biden.
Yeah, well, I don't know why they agreed to one against Trump, because even though I think he's addled too.
They needed to expose it because he wouldn't walk away.
Well, I think Trump is addled, but he's quick on his feet. And he's very cutting, and he's got this patter down. But I think that was Joe Biden said he was going to be a one-term president, and that was the thing that I took away was you're changing your mind, and that didn't seem quite fair. It didn't seem very democratic.
Somebody changed their mind. I don't necessarily know if it was President Biden. There's a lot we don't know about President Biden.
No,
that I do want to talk about, because to me that's the bigger story in this.
It's just sad.
There's a 4-year scandal here that all I keep hearing is about threats to democracy and this and that. And I'm going to tell you, an unelected cabal of people running the United States of America, which it appears now is
we're never
inarguable, because even Jake Tapper is telling you that. That's a scandal. But is this the most embarrassing statement of the 21st century media? The fact that this book now says everything that millions of Americans, tens if not hundreds of millions of Americans, both those who voted for Joe Biden and against Joe Biden, could clearly see. Melanie, we saw him fall up the stairs 3 times. Okay, it happens. Funny, we got some laughs. He fell off the bike down at wherever he was.
That I understood.
Funny,
but
he fell on a stage. Right. He walked around aimlessly on a stage.
He went up to a woman who wasn't his wife.
He went up to a woman that wasn't his wife. The Easter Bunny had to escort him in the right direction at the White House Easter egg hunt. He asked where the dead congresswoman that he honored posthumously 10 minutes earlier was in the crowd. We all knew. Hell, we knew it in 2020 in the campaign. They hit him in the basement for a reason, and COVID was not that reason.
They talk about that.
And Jake Tapper acknowledges that as well. So everybody knew this man was impaired, and yet they let him run the United States of America and never called attention to it. So put aside for a second whether he really ran the United States of America. the media let this happen. They're not stupid. Jake Tapper's not a stupid
Thank God I don't cover national politics, but
would you have reported it?
Oh, of course. Well, you know me.
It.
Yes, of course.
I'd like to think you would.
This is the same thing.
If Tom Golden was impaired and we didn't report that, we would be an embarrassment to our field.
Same thing with the ICE thing. If you feel your city is being hurt by the federal government's actions, I mean, I think you have to say something. If you see something, you have to say something. Isn't that the whole mantra? See something, say something.
But that's a legit. I think this will long term help Lowell. You think it will long term hurt Lowell. Whatever.
How will it help? How will it help Lowell? No, curious.
Well, because your school won't need an extra how many millions for transportation. Long enough. You won't need it. You won't need all the English language learner resources that you've had to add.
There
to
are
your
way
field.
more homeless students than there were migrants. I think there's 10% of the school district. So that's a huge burden there for transportation. But I get your point.
I get my question. How do we count homeless? When we grew up, homeless was somebody who was literally sleeping in the back of a car. I think they count homeless a little differently today, to the point where people in a hotel room are counted as homeless. So I would like to get inside some of those numbers to see how many of the homeless are sleeping in hotel rooms, be they at the ICC or at the Best Western in Chelmsford.
Well, they don't have to be in hotel rooms. Like my daughter is housing her fiance's son, and he's under McKinney-Vento because he got kicked out of his dad's house.
Right, but is he really homeless? He's got a roof over his head.
He's sleeping on the couch.
There
are
homeless people.
Yeah.
Well, hey, listen, I grew up on Adams Street in a 4-story tenement where people slept on couches. People slept 3 or 4 in a room. If we're going to count these homeless, then we got to go back and count the homeless population over the last 150 years of immigration in America the same way we count it now.
It's very messy. I think what I hear you saying and a lot of other people saying, and even Joe Biden's presidency, it was messy. And it didn't feel organized. And now that I know from the inside reporting that he was, I believe, addled, then a lot of these things make sense, because that whole immigration thing just made no sense to me. Like, I felt like that whole process was killing blue state governors.
Do you want me to spell it out for you?
Sure, Teddy.
Blue state governors have lost so much population, they would lose congressional seats. They should have lost congressional seats in 2020.
Yeah.
They will in 2030. And the only way to artificially inflate it was to import a population that you hoped got counted in the census.
Did they? The census was 2020.
Yes, but they delayed it to 2021.
Well, they did.
They would not let Donald Trump's people decide the census. Well, because of COVID, the census got delayed, and that decision should have been, those numbers should have been done before the election.
The problem here is COVID. Everything stems from COVID.
Sure.
No, but you know what, Teddy? So when you asked me what I reported, yes, I like to think, either in the column or in real-time reporting.
But Jake Tapper and Alec Berenson did not, and no other people did.
And the media is not calling them out on that. You know, that's why I was reluctant to give them my $14.99, because I felt like, shame on you.
You should have listened to Megyn Kelly's podcast with him. She's apparently friends with Tapper, but she did. Oh, really? She called him out every step of the way. And when he tried to, as you said, they tried to defend it. He goes, well, I did talk about it. And she goes, you shut off Laura Trump. You called her a conspiracy theorist and all this stuff. We remember when you spoke about this stuff, you got called out. So here's what's interesting. Now let's talk about who was actually running the country. You read the book. Yeah. Do you believe Joe Biden was actually running the country?
No, I think it was Joe Biden.
And you think it was Jill?
And her, I do.
Which might be, it's a better option, because, you know, Nancy Reagan apparently ran the country for the last 2 years of Ronnie.
Or Wilson's wife, Doris, or whatever her name was.
At least they got the ear of the president when they laid down at night. There's talk that there was a cabal of 5 advisors, none of them elected, who were also making these decisions.
They call it, and I don't know how, I might say the word wrong, Politburo? Is that
Well, oligarchies and threats to democracy. How many times do we hear it about a guy who we clearly know is running the country? Remember 4 months ago when they told us Elon Musk is running the country? They don't say that anymore. Donald Trump is the dictator.
Yeah, poor Elon. He's like licking his wounds back down in Starlink or wherever that town is.
But now you have legitimate reporting that unelected people, and even if it was Jill Biden, were running the country and perhaps using the auto pen.
Yeah,
signing executive orders.
Right.
pardoning people.
Well, I do. Trump is the master.
People need to go to jail for this.
I just could take a page out of Trump's book because, the man is the master. You might call it a manipulation, but he's the master of theater. When he's doing that pen in real time, he's telegraphing, I'm in charge. I'm in charge.
It's a power
This is
move,
really,
right?
it's a power flex. I read that and I thought that was a great phrase. Look, Joe Biden screwed it up. And, when I was growing up and reading about FDR being in a wheelchair, I was like, wow, how did that happen? Nobody knew, and they would prop him up in his braces, and it was a whole cover up. And then JFK with his Addison's disease. And what was the other? There was another cover up. Wilson with his strokes, and I think, we're so much more evolved. And then I read this book, and I was, I got to tell you, I was sad.
Those are somewhat understandable because we're talking about physical ailments, right? The governor of Texas is in a wheelchair, and nobody questions what they question his policies, but nobody questions whether he has the capacity.
With
to
FDR,
govern.
they definitely tamped it down.
Correct.
I mean, it was a cover up. He wasn't addled, but
correct. So we assume. I haven't seen any reporting that FDR, when he was even at the end of the tenure there, when he was sitting with Churchill and Stalin and whoever, that he still had his mental faculties.
Oh, yeah, I think
it's clear Joe Biden did not have his mental faculties.
Right. But the whole idea that the press, we're talking about a cover-up, the press didn't report on FDR's wheelchair, or the fact that he was in a hip to knee or hip to ankle brace, or that he had to be helped off the stage by whatever they had then, Secret Service. But or that Wilson had a stroke and was lying in bed and his wife. Then you think, that was then. That was at the 1920s, or that was in the 40s, they were in the dark ages, and then, or even the 60s. You think, Addison's, whatever. But then with Dr. Feelgood, but then you get here and you think, oh my gosh, we're going through it again. And 40 years from now, people are going to think, what were you thinking? Why didn't
Do you know what people are thinking? And quite frankly, we've been thinking this since 2015, and for me, probably even before then. What else are they lying to me about?
Well,
what else have they been lying to me about? They lied to us about Russian collusion. It's specifically with Trump. They lied about Russian collusion. They lied about the Hunter Biden laptop. All of these.
Oh, Jake talks about the Hunter Biden.
Jake talks about it. And Jake even says something even more scary. He thinks Hunter was one of the key decision makers, that Hunter became the most trusted advisor.
Oh. Is that what he says in his interviews?
I believe he said that with Megyn Kelly. He doesn't say it in the book.
He says he's very influential in terms of saying, here's how I want it to go down. But I think he was an outside player. I think it was really Joe Biden.
But if they're lying to you about that, and then if they're lying to you about things, like it took a while for us to realize the Hunter Biden laptop was legitimate, but they were lying to us about things we could see with our own eyes. Mm-hmm. I will never believe another word Jake Tapper or his network or CBS tells me. They may be right. And eventually they'll provide enough proof where I will believe it. But when it comes to an opinion piece or an unsourced thing or whatever, I've stopped believing all of them because they have lied to me so many times. When you lie to me and I don't know, AKA FDR and whatever, okay.
Well, that wasn't in your time.
Right. But when you lie to me with what I can see with my own eyes, now I know you're a liar.
Well, it's disappointing, too, because he's a bubble within the bubble. He's at the national media, which is its own bubble. And I think they think they're a little untouchable. But it hurts all of us. And, to draw it back to ice, to circle back, all these actions have consequences. And they trickle down. And so when Jake Tapper, who's a national correspondent, pulls that monkey junk BS, then that trickles down and everybody looks at me and all my colleagues and thinks, what are we holding back? I like to, in my little remit, I like to think I don't have anything to hold back. I think Lowell is pretty transparent. And I don't think there's a lot to hide. I have a lot of respect for the way the city conducts its business. It's, pretty much out there. And it's just tweaking some of the, not the narrative, but not my narrative, but tweaking how they're relaying the narrative.
Right. I mean, look, everybody has opinion. We know you grew up a certain way with certain beliefs and whatever. You're influenced by your upbringing. I'm influenced by mine, by our life experience. People are naturally biased. That's just called life. But flat out reporting of facts has to be, if you're going to be taken legitimately and seriously, you have to say the facts. You can't lie and cover up. I'd like to think our local media at least gives the facts. An opinion pieces, and I write opinion pieces. You guys write opinion pieces in the Sunday
column.
We disagree, whatever. But when you read a story, when you write a story about a meeting, I believe that is accurate. When you write a story about what you saw and what somebody told you at a homeless encampment or at a whatever, at a planning board disagreement, I have to be able to believe that, and I do. And the scary part is, I believe a bunch of bloggers with no formal training in journalism more than I believe our national journalists.
No, just curious.
A bunch of them. There's just a bunch of people I follow. I started following during COVID, people who were 100% proven correct. And look, RFK was the first guy to call out Anthony Fauci and the origins of the virus and this and that. And back when people were being silenced and whatever. And that, and that's the other thing I'll point to. Like, everybody knows all this stuff now. And it wasn't just Biden that Jake Tapper lied to us about. He lied to us about a lot of other things, too. And I'm picking the name Jake Tapper, but it's not just Jake. It's CBS News. 60 Minutes, the most revered news program
I always
of
hated
my
60
upbringing.
Minutes.
Did you?
Oh, my God. I felt like they were so...
Well, I used to watch them because they came on after the football games, and it was that or Disney.
I was annoyed as all get out, like bossy bears.
But if it was on 60 Minutes, it was legit to me.
Oh,
and now I gotta wonder, my moment was, I always tell the story, it was when they trotted Colin Powell out.
I know.
To convince people for the justification for invading Iraq.
I had a lot of respect for Colin.
The weapons of mass destruction.
Following orders. They picked the right guy.
And now that I look back at it, you could almost see he was somewhat pained by it.
Sure.
That he didn't even believe what he was saying. But
he would have had to resign.
But that's when I started questioning my government and realizing no different than the propagandists in Russia.
I have to tell you, Teddy, when
or in Venezuela with Maduro. And our people, we just dress it up a lot more nicely. We have CNN, independent media. We have NPR, independent media. They all been lying to us nonstop. So what else are they lying about?
Well, Colin Powell was a watershed for me because I was against I didn't think they had nuclear. I didn't think they had weapons.
I cheered it. And man, did they lie. I cheered that second. And I was able to, in the wake of 9/11, I was able to justify the Iraq invasion because of the weapons of mass destruction. And also they told us they were somehow involved in the, 9/11.
Well, Colin, originally he was the tipping point that said there were weapons of mass.
Yes.
And he held up that little vial. And that kind of changed my mind because I was like, well, Colin Powell,
And we were lied to.
Yeah, that felt bad because
and I like Colin Powell so much. I just
is it Colin?
Colin, I don't know, but the CIA deceived him. And we've seen it. Our intelligence community, 51 agents sign collusion things, Hunter Biden laptop things. So I could see why Colin Powell would buy it. But I bet you there were people above Colin Powell, the Dick Cheneys, who's now a hero. By the way, isn't he? Congratulations to you lefties for having Dick Cheney and Liz Cheney as your...
What? You lump me in all these categories, Teddy. I'm surprised.
But, that's what's so disappointing to me about that book. And you said it. Thank you for reading the book, and thank you for saying it, that, it's, man, they lied to us.
Yeah. And that's not a good feeling. And so, I feel like there has to be a reset. I don't think that Trump is that reset. I think he's doing a lot of things that are off the hook. I don't think it's good for democracy. I think if you're that strong, just follow the bloody Constitution and do it right. Do it buttoned up.
What if he is and he's not?
Well, we'll find out. I mean, I think there are a lot of cases.
We're in court every day, so.
Yeah, I don't think them picking up that Tufts woman in public was appropriate. She was here legally. She wants to do free speech. If you're going to argue that people who come to this country don't have free speech, that's a completely different argument.
People on visas live by different rules than everybody else.
I know, but that was heavy-handed. I don't think that I didn't think that was appropriate or necessary. Well, now we're going to kick out everybody. I mean, I just read the paper today. They're going to revoke all the visas for all the Chinese students. What the heck? It's going to be...
Yeah, poor Harvard there, all their spies are going to be
I don't
gone.
worry about Harvard with their $52 billion endowment.
But, this...
And all their leadership titans who can donate. My niece went to Harvard, and she said as soon as she graduated, she got a solicitation. Your class... is behind the class of, I can't remember when she graduated, 2013. And they said, your class, the class of 2013 is behind in its fundraising from the class of 2012. And I'm sure they were telling the class of 2012,
they were behind.
You're behind. So it's this whole Ponzi scheme. And she was really intimidated by that because despite her Harvard degree, she didn't land a job right away. And she was thinking, oh my God, I can't show up for all these
classes. What was her
classes.
major?
Chemistry.
You couldn't find a job as a chemist?
Yeah, she was. Well, she went back to Detroit, so that was a little.
Oh, okay.
That was
because all these Annie Ducans were taking up all the chemist spots in the Massachusetts.
There you go. She
State
should have
Police
stayed. I
Fire
tried to
Lab.
get her to stay on the East Coast, but and that. So I thought, oh my gosh, they're raising tons of money, which is probably not even part of their operating budget or all this other stuff. And so I think Harvard's going to be fine. I don't think we have to worry about.
I'm
them.
not shedding a tear for Harvard.
No, they'll be okay.
I think they're okay. I am shedding a tear for our country, though. I think we're seeing some bad stuff being exposed, and I wonder where we're going.
I know your nerves
after
are
these 4 years.
Yeah.
Because I'm not sure. I'm wondering what else isn't on the up and up.
So when are you going to have Lori Trahan in here?
We'll get her back. I think
Yeah.
she's. I did reach out to her for comment on a story. Her staff, and unfortunately, she's planning her father's funeral and wake the last.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, he passed away a week and a half ago.
I did not
she wrote
know.
about it on social media, and I believe the services are coming up at the end of this week. Well, today's Thursday, so it's either Thursday, Friday, or
my
Friday,
condolences to her
Saturday.
and
So,
her family.
but I would love to have her back and talk about a lot of the things.
I think they need to do something. The Democratic Party needs to do fire in the hole. They need to blow it up.
I think they need to just start telling the American people the truth.
Well, and if
I
that's
think
the fire in the hole, then that's what they need to do.
Which you don't think that Lori Trahan, Elizabeth Warren, Ed Markey, and everybody else knew about Joe Biden's cognitive decline?
I can't speak for them, but I'd love to know what they think. Of
course.
Absolutely.
Of course. Hey, by the way, interesting theory popping around on Twitter that Elizabeth Warren was really the one controlling the auto pen. I'm not sure I buy it. And somebody who somebody I started following during COVID, more for his election. He breaks down numbers of the registration gains and losses by party per se and whatnot. He's a phenomenal follower. He's great to know what's going to happen in an election.
Yeah.
But
I'm not buying that.
He told me he's not buying. He's the one who alerted me to the Elizabeth Warren thing that other people are saying. He says, I don't buy it. I think they may be trying to scapegoat her.
Yeah.
She didn't strike me as the guy that they would turn over the auto pen to.
No. I think when you have those sort of conspiracies, it's tight. It's tightly held. So, yeah, it's very sad. It's a sad day for democracy. Shame on all of them.
All right. We end on a moment where we agree.
Well, we agree. I think we agree with the general outlines. It's the implementation where people get bogged down. And I think, you're either for or against immigration. Well, we didn't have a choice for that. It was here. So how are we going to implement it? And so we get kind of down in the weeds on how that process is going to look. It's already been decided. But now, yes, you're right. I'm upset if it was decided by Joe Biden or these other unpaid or unelected people, that it wasn't. It always did seem. So
you're wondering what else they're lying to you about this immigration story, like the Maryland dad and whatnot? Do you leave open the possibility?
The Maryland?
The guy who's the alleged, he had the MS-13 tattoo on his fingers, and he's been charged with assaulting his wife twice, had trafficked individuals in his car, but the senator from Maryland went down to see him anyway. So
I focus
on.
Are
they lying to us about the immigration issue and what ICE is doing? Do you wonder that the same voices who covered up his decline are the same ones telling you now about the evils and the perils of what Tom Homan and Donald Trump are doing?
Yeah, but when they act in that way in our fair city, I don't think they dispel those notions. I personally don't live in Lowell, so, I don't want to sound like a carpetbagger, but I don't feel that's the Lowell way. Right. And I think it wouldn't be bad for people to say, hey, you're the feds, you do you, but we don't like it. I don't know what the problem with that. Same way with Joe Biden. You do you, but you're not making sense.
Right. So you are on the lookout for an ICE action.
I know.
You want to go onto the scene. So anybody who sees one, don't go right to Facebook and post it. Go right to Melanie Gilbert. Message her.
I have asked people, and I got another community leader who told me about the Hafners.
The Bridge
yeah, but by the time I got there, they were gone. They're fast. They're like, as I mentioned to you, they're like a blitzkrieg.
They're not going to wait for the...
No, they're not going to wait for me to show up. And I certainly didn't get an invitation.
Let's say you get there on time.
I'll wear my lanyard.
Will you demand to see warrants and...
Well, no, I think I'll just introduce myself and, get the lay of the land. I'm not going to interfere.
But you won't interfere?
No, I know better. And we've been sort of not coached, but instructed. Yeah, it's a public place, but if they set up a perimeter, you can't breach it. My boss...
No different than a fire.
Right. Bruce Castleberry said, don't get arrested, my editor.
And that is my advice to people in Lowell and anywhere else watching. don't get arrested. It's okay to disagree. It's okay to protest and scream and shout, but don't interfere, because then you get in trouble.
Yeah,
and you also put your local police in a difficult spot now.
Yeah, and
because they're the ones who are going to have to do it.
I mostly want to lay eyes on the scene, because all my reporting, well, I don't even report on it. That's Aaron. But my sense of it is secondhand from our citizen reporters. So I think that's a detriment to the paper. I think we should have boots on the ground when this happens, and so that we can report it through our eyes, not through secondhand eyes. Right. And I think that's the value in newspapers in general. Jake was the boots on the ground, and he didn't report it. And that, that's bad. And I'm sorry that I gave him my $14.99. I don't even have a book I can give, resell or anything, recoup my money.
Worth it. Also, do me a favor. If you happen upon one of these ice scenes and start milling around, can you ask my follow-up question of them? Is the business owner one of the ones you've got in cuffs? Because that's what I want to know. Where's the business manager and the manager that know these people
totally agree.
Don't have the right documentation?
Well, have you been on ISIS Facebook? They're really active. Their PR is
great.
They say thank you for your tips. Like, oh my God, here's our tip line.
Yes, it was at the bottom of what they put on the Bridge Street story. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
They had the tip line, and they also had a website. If you have questions about proper worker documentation.
Yeah, they're on it. So, it's hard to overcome that momentum. And I just think, they should slow the roll in Lowell. I don't think it has to come. If you're that sure of who you are and what you're doing, I don't know. It's like what I always say to my kids. Say what you mean what you say, and don't say it mean. So do what you do. Don't do it mean, and don't give out your press release. They don't give out any information.
No.
As you know.
They don't do follow-up questions.
No, nothing.
All right.
Melanie
Gilbert, the last words for you. Thank you for coming into the Lions Den. Thank you for not stabbing me and getting yourself arrested. It's always good to have you. We'll get you back in a couple of weeks, okay?
Sounds good. Thanks, Teddy.
All right. Melanie Gilbert from the Lowell Sun joining us on today's Daily Pulse. You can read her. Well, pretty much she's got stuff pretty much every day, multiple things some days, but definitely the Sunday column is a must read. If you only read one newspaper, if you only buy one newspaper a week, the Sunday paper of the Sun is the one you got to buy just to read the column. You might love it. You might get triggered like I will, but you'll be talking about it as my friends and I always do. So thank you to Melanie for joining us. Thank you for joining us as well. Tomorrow, we'll have Leslie Boder here for a Big Fun Friday edition of the Daily Pulse. Next week, we're going to unite Marty Laurie and Greg Pappas. I don't know what else I have. I got a bunch of other stuff booked. I can't even remember it off the top of my head. None of it will be as good as Melanie was today, though. So till next time, till tomorrow, everybody stay safe, enjoy the day today, and we'll catch you on the other side.